What's up? I saw some of Destiny's talk with Z. I didn't get to watch it all, but I watched some of it.
What you think about when you're born into a fire. Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They wanna let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away, fade away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. Listen up now, because we're never dropping out. Beat the odds, beat the big house. The brains are bigger than the doubt. We've been thinking for ourselves, never let the truth fade away. This is bigger than ourselves, we won't let the world burn away, burn away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. To blame, haters face the world's mistakes. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway.
I heard Tim Pool for the 10th million time today tell everybody that we're in the middle of a civil war.
And we feel betrayed.
He's only been saying it for a decade, so it's got to be true eventually, right? If he just keeps saying it until he dies, one of those times it's going to be true. Now he's moved to it's a full-blown covert civil war because Tesla dealerships are being burnt down and people are being attacked in the streets, and it's a civil war. The left is a cult, the right is not, because the right has other right-wing people on their podcast, and the left don't do that. Craziest fucking interview, dude. Sam Cedar went over. I don't know if I want to watch the full video or Sam Cedar's breakdown, but it's some shit, man. It is. It is intense. I'll tell you that much. All right, here we go.
Hey daddies, it's me, the Linda Binda from TikTok. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to thank you for watching Cold Beer Confessionals with Will Bird. I think that's just incredible. I've watched a few episodes and I'm just like very intrigued. But you know what I'm most intrigued in is Big Daddy's meat stick. I heard that it's very thick, like a good old German sausage. You know, Linda and her coochie loves that. Oh, never mind. Let's not go there. Anyways, I hope you have a good show and enjoy it as you can. There's a lot of weird things that go on, especially when it comes from the realm of Linda Bindaland. So, enjoy the show. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Welcome everybody. I am Will Bird, and this is the Cold Beer Confessional. We go over politics and social issues. Thank you for joining us. I'm Will Bird, the host, and appreciate you guys being here. If you want to support the show, do that at coldbeer.fund, coldbeer.fund. That's the website behind me, where I'm erupting from a nice young Asian man's butthole. You can go there. All the links for my social media if you want to follow. We got Twitch, Kick, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, Facebook, TikTok, Rumble, Discord, and Patreon. So there you go. There's all the links and the donation links if you want to support the show. If you enjoy what we do, that's how we pay the bills around here. I'll probably shout it out a couple times. Anyways, I was just talking about Tim Pool. Sam Cedar was doing a thing on it. Not that one. It's this one. Tim Pool went on this. You'll see the podcast in a second. I don't know the podcast, but I've seen people on it, basically like people that were canceled or that are controversial or whatever on the podcast. And the guys seem pretty open-minded to let just about anybody on there and talk about what they want to talk about and try to engage with them. I don't know the name of it. We'll see in a second. But Tim Pool's on there again in the middle of our Civil War, where I agree with Tim. Well, I agree with most people. I don't even think Tim would say this. I agree with most people. There are crazy people on both sides, right? Like the people that fucking stormed the Capitol. I don't know how we quantify how many crazy people are on the left, how many crazy people on the right. On the left, I usually call them Twitter people because it's like people that don't even exist in real life. It's people that don't exist in real life. They seem to be on Twitter, but sometimes they have extremely loud voices. I'm starting to see them more on TikTok, right? They're the cancel everybody for super microaggressions because they're basically Nazis and we can't have that in our movement, and just crazy people like that. And on the right, we cover a lot of those crazy people on the show. So they clearly exist on both sides. It's hard to quantify how much is this, how much is that. The problem that I see with the right currently is that somebody can float an idea that to what I would call a normal fucking person sounds fucking insane. And the Trump tards are like, yeah, sounds good to me. Like the other day we had somebody floating the idea of a temporary patriotic dictator. The only way to fix how deep you can't get out of what the crisis that they believe that we're in by voting. The only way to fix that is a temporary patriotic dictator who they know would just concede power back over once he's done. And I feel like if you went to a Trump rally, you could probably get 90% of the people, if not more, to agree to that. Trump has to be a temporary dictator. He'll hand power back over when he's done, but he's got to be a temporary dictator just for a little bit to fix what all the deep states messed up. I feel like there's a lot of people on the right that would agree with that. A lot of Trump people on the right that would agree with that. But there's also people on the right that are calling out Trump. So can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, I guess. So let's check Tim Pool out. Hear his argument, how fucking dumb it is. Then we'll go from there. I mean, I call it dumb. I think it's stupid. I think it's ridiculous things he's saying. But, I mean, he's got a gigantic audience, and he makes tons of money doing this. So it obviously resonates with somebody.
Is this new?
Yeah, this is from 4 days ago.
Oh my God.
Only 700,000 views on it.
You'll recall when I was last on Tim Pool's program, one of the things we talked about is I complained to him that like he spends.
There was this weird thing between Tim Pool and Sam Cedar for a long time where Tim Pool called Sam Cedar. He basically said, like, in the podcast world, everybody knows Sam Cedar's like this like snake that like comes on and nobody wants to have him on. That's why Joe Rogan won't have him. That's why other people won't have him behind the scenes. It's a known thing that Sam Cedar's like this horrible person that'll just try to score gotcha points, and made it sound like, even though Sam's like worked in like entertainment and shit, right? Like he's been like an actor and shit like that. That Sam would reveal these behind the scene things that you wanted off the record, and he would be horrible for your show, and I don't know. It was just really weird. Then he finally had him on. Tim couldn't produce any evidence of that. Tim wouldn't address the Russia stuff. It was just really weird tension for no reason. It sounds like Tim was just scared of Sam Cedar. And he was making excuses not to have him on.
So little time talking about stuff that is meaningful, like Social Security, although he did opine on it after reading 2 paragraphs of an article. That was his words, not mine. And I said, you spend so much time on like the notion of civil.
And he tried to have Sam Cedar on during COVID, apparently. A lot of this started from that. He tried to have Sam Cedar on during COVID. Sam Cedar thought it was like a remote interview. So he's like, yeah, whatever. Just send me a link or whatever. I'll join in. Tim Pool says that he made it clear that it was like an in-person interview and it didn't work out. So then Sam Cedar makes a post like, it didn't work out. I guess he wanted an in-person interview. I'm not doing it. It was during the height of COVID, right? And Tim Pool kind of lost his fucking mind saying, oh, you're saying I won't have you on, blah, blah, blah. You're trying to, you're approaching this in bad faith. We were going to have you on. It was just so weird.
War in this country. He's been saying there's a civil war for, I would say, close to 10 years, or that one's going to happen.
At least 10 years.
And I still don't think that there's going to be a
Tim Pool has been shilling a civil war since Occupy Wall Street.
Civil war in this country. But I guess if it gets him on to trigonometry.
I mean, we have mass shootings, some of which are like political.
Trigonometry. That's the name of the podcast. Do we want to watch the full thing, or we want to watch a breakdown of it? I guess is the question. Because obviously Sam Cedar's going to pull clips and do a breakdown. Trigonometry.
Motivated. We have
militias.
Yeah, right.
Without a doubt. But that's not a civil war per se. But here's Tim Pool. Remember, you got to feel for Tim because his favorite band.
So literally the title of this Trigonometry podcast, it shows Tim Pool in his beanie, and he's like, the thumbnail is like him pointing up to the Capitol building, I think, and like a Jan 6er in front of it waving a flag, but it's got a red filter on it, so it's hard to tell. But he's like pointing up to it, and it says, "This got intense," and then the title is "Civil War in America?" -- Tim Pool.
And turned out to
be led
by a trans person. That was very hard for him to deal with, and he thought a couple years ago, I'm going to be making all this money from Russia. He didn't know it was from Russia at the time. It was from Gerard Depardieu. Turned out to remember, you got to feel for Tim.
So Tim's favorite band ends up having a trans person lead the band.
Because his favorite band turned out to be led by a trans person. That was very hard for him to deal with, and he thought a couple years ago, I'm going to be making all this money from Russia. He didn't know it was from Russia at the time. It was from Gerard Depardieu or somebody like that, and then all that money went away, and so he's got to get back to the Civil War thing. Here he is. Also, you know what else I noticed? He's wearing the exact same sweatshirt too every day now. Was he wearing that same one the other day that we were looking at the clip of him?
Sometimes he has a
Tim Pool says that early on in his career, he met a publicist. And this publicist said, if I could give you one piece of advice, you're going to be the biggest thing, right? You're going to be huge. You're going to be the next news, right? Mainstream news. But if I could give you one piece of advice, you need to wear the exact same outfit every day as if you're a cartoon character. That's not even a lie. Tim Pool admits that. He admits that in his show. He said it before on his show. I don't know if he says it anymore, but it was like a few years ago he said that. Somebody asked him why he wears the beanie, because his excuse used to be that he wears the beanie because without the beanie, Antifa doesn't know who he is. Without the beanie, Antifa doesn't know who he is because they try to make death threats. They threaten to dox him and come to his house and kill him and all these things, right? So without the beanie, he's a normal guy. And when he puts the beanie on, he's Tim Pool, the guy that Antifa hates.
Blazer over the hoodie, but yeah.
Okay.
Like Abraham Lincoln was the bad guy? Or do we say...
He's talking about how Abe Lincoln suspended habeas corpus in the course of the Civil War.
Oh, so in other words, there was an actual war going on in the country, and Lincoln suspended habeas corpus.
Yeah.
Trump. This, I don't know how much this come up in this podcast. The Trump administration is potentially, they basically said, if the courts make the right decisions, we're fine, right? If the courts agree with us, we're fine. But we may suspend habeas corpus for immigrants. That's literally an announcement that Stephen Himmler made today. Habeas corpus is the ability, the right to challenge your imprisonment, your detention. It translates it translates from Latin to you shall have a body, the body. It basically guarantees that if you're detained, arrested, whatever, right, you're in detention, that you have the right to speak to a judge and make sure it's lawful. They have to justify the detention. I don't see a way that you can suspend habeas corpus for immigrants and not for everybody. Again, because just like due process, someone says, let's say you're a full-blooded American citizen born here, your family goes back to the fucking Mayflower. Someone says, well, we think you're this illegal immigrant. You say, no, I'm not. But you don't get the right to see a judge. Who do you say that to? Right? We've literally had people show up with their birth certificates at court, and the judge say, sorry, they're on an ICE detention. Like, I don't understand how they suspend this and it not affect citizens as well. Just for immigrants. I don't think that works. That's scary. The scary precedent to set, but that's what the Trump team is throwing around. Trump involved in discussions over suspending habeas corpus. White House considering suspending habeas corpus, Stephen Miller says. Trump administration looking at suspending habeas corpus for migrants, Stephen Miller says.
Okay.
In times of war, a wartime president makes difficult decisions which are outside what our principles purport to be.
But we're not in the time of war.
And it's also as well, Tim. No, we're not.
So when
Tim, can I just make a point? And
we
this
are in
is
time of war.
In times of war, the president makes difficult decisions, like getting rid of due process, habeas corpus, our founding documents, the Constitution, whatever. We are in a war. We are in a war.
Right. Okay. We'll come to that in a second. When the government takes away rights, it is very difficult, if not almost impossible, for you to get them back. Can we just?
That's exactly right. When the government, I was saying this during COVID. When the government takes it, you have to walk a very fine line when you're forcing people to do something. When the government steps in and does something new or something that they gave up doing 100 years ago, it's very hard to get that back, if not impossible, because they're setting precedent, right? Just like Trump is going to say, well, Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War and the aftermath thereafter. They're setting precedent. So the next president comes in and says, well, Trump suspended habeas corpus. And the next president comes in and says, well, Trump and this other guy suspended habeas corpus. See what I'm saying? It doesn't, it's not a good thing. And for people to be cheering it on is wild.
Agree that.
Yes.
So you are willing to give up rights in this society for the government to then come in and then enact against the enemies.
When have humans ever not done that? Give me one example. One.
When have humans never not done that? I mean, do you mean overarchingly like we don't live in an anarchy? Sure. We have this bargain to where we give up some rights for the government to function, right? Or we give up some rights for security. But we typically don't give away fundamental rights just so we can get rid of immigrants, I guess.
In civilized society,
Not true. In World War II, let's pause it. Hold on for 1 second.
He cut him off as soon as he said it. In civilized society, not true.
He wants an example of when people have never taken away.
It's funny because he's listing exceptions, right?
Well, that's the thing. It's like a double negative, right? When have humans not taken away habeas corpus?
It's like, well, I can mention the time that it was in Civil War, and also, okay, I'll do another example, which was World War II, which is, again, like, also, we shouldn't have done a lot of things that we did do during World War II.
Well, I think we can look back in all of our history and say there were things that we shouldn't do.
Right.
Like slavery, like extermination and genocide of Native Americans, like internment, like
Current immigration stuff.
Jim Crow laws.
Imagine giving up like your Fourth Amendment protections, right? Imagine giving up Fourth Amendment protections for immigration or whatever, and then trying to claw those back, right? That's the unreasonable search and seizures, warrantless searches, warrantless seizures, and just allowing the police to come into your home at anytime they want to for whatever reason because they're looking for immigrants, right? And then they say the immigration thing's over, or maybe they continue the immigration thing just so they can continue to have that power. But let's say the immigration part's over. How do you get that back? The police just unilaterally say, okay, we're not going to do it anymore.
Et cetera, et cetera. Like, I'm not even necessarily convinced that once you suspend rights, they never come back. Right. It'd be much harder to put people into concentration camps, at least I like to think so, that are American citizens today. It may not be, but I would like to think it would be a little bit more difficult.
When you have a president who's asked directly, do you have a responsibility to follow the Constitution? He's like, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. This is where you end up at.
It's going to be even tricky for them to put undocumented immigrants in mass concentration camps in this country. I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to be able to. But there's going to be, I think, probably a little bit more pushback. Now, maybe if we were at war with El Salvador or something, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a scenario. But we're not at war right now by any stretch of the imagination or any definition. Let's put it this way. If we're at war right
I could imagine a scenario where it wouldn't be hard. So let's say we go to a war with, let's say we go to war with China, okay? And Chinese immigrants en masse, like a large number of them, 100 or more within, a month, show up at places and commit mass unaliving events, right? And suicide bombings. It probably wouldn't be hard to get people to agree to do that sort of thing, right? To start rounding them up kind of deal. But that's not going on, right? In fact, these immigrants tend to commit crimes, especially violent crimes, but tend to commit crimes at lower rates than U.S.-born citizens.
Right now, there is no time where we've never been at war.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Give me one example. One.
In civilized society,
Not true. In World War II,
Not true.
the U.S. Office of Censorship and banned people from expressing.
It's interesting that you say this because all anti-Ukraine people in America keep calling Zelensky a dictator for having martial law, which is in line with the Ukrainian constitution, and not having an election like the UK
Well, he
didn't have.
declared it, and the Constitution says that he can declare it and Congress can uphold it. There's an argument that it can be, he can overturn it.
Well, my point is...
But I agree, in time of war, presidents do crazy things.
But you are stretching the definition of war way beyond its remit.
No, I'm not. It's called fifth and sixth generational warfare. So we have technological advances in conflict, and they alter how we perceive what war is. If you go back to the earliest days, what is the purpose of the conflict? Why do wars happen? Sometimes they're silly. You don't believe in the same God as me, so you must be destroyed. I mean, these are largely silly, but they have to do with cultural cohesion, so they come from somewhere from an evolutionary psychological perspective. But typically it's resource conflict. Resource is the principal driver. I do think it's absolutely hilarious that the East India Trading Company engaged in warfare that resulted in the death of 50,000 people because black peppercorn was a delicacy, it was a luxury in Europe, okay? But typically it's, I don't have enough food or water, and I will take it, and my people will not die. I don't care.
So fifth generation warfare, I think, I'm not sure, but I think fifth generation warfare would be this asymmetrical, like, cyber attack, online narratives, right? Maybe even like hacking to like shut down municipalities or power plants or water plants, stuff like that, without bombs, basically. No troops, no bullets, no bombs. That'd be fifth generation warfare. Sixth generation warfare, I just don't think is established yet. I don't think that sixth generation warfare is established. Will it be AI? Maybe. Will it be EMPs without nuclear weapons? Maybe. It could be a lot of things. It could be extremely precision guided weapons, like a weapon that you could shoot, and instead of taking out a city block, maybe it's like an assassination. Like you fire a missile that blows up somewhere above the ground. It distributes a payload. That payload comes back into the fucking atmosphere or gets close to 10,000 feet. It delivers a drone, a mini drone that has just a big enough warhead to land on the back of somebody's head and blow their brains out. Right? That could be. Who knows? I don't think sixth generation is established yet. Fifth generation is still kind of like, people are like talking, are we in the fifth generation? Are we not? What does it look like? What does it encompass? I think it's hard to declare sixth generation when fifth generation is still so So first generation, ancient and post-classical battles fought with massed manpower using a phalanx, line, and column tactics. Even think about this like up in the Civil War, right? We got lines and columns. Second generation industrial warfare, invention of rifled barrels, breech loading weapons, machine gun, indirect fire, so mortar strikes. It's before widespread motorized vehicles, though. Okay? Or combined arms, right? Different combat arms of military branch that effectively work with each other, right? Third generation would use late modern technology, speed, stealth, surprise, tons of motorized vehicles, non-linear warfare. We're not lining up in lines anymore. Like we are getting in, striking, and running around. But there are no traditional lines anywhere. Fourth generation would be postmodern, decentralized, blurring the line between war and politics, combatants and civilians, right? So think what we went through in Iraq, right? Everybody's potentially a civilian. Everybody's potentially a combatant. Private military contractors, right? So those are civilians, but they're being privately paid, like they're being paid to come out here and fight. Private military contractors, paramilitary organizations, so like the Wagner Group, and then fifth generation, where most people think we're at now, even if it is loosely defined, is again social engineering, misinformation, cyber attacks, Ron Macbeth has a great example of it. It is, we could take, let's say we're building munitions in Maine, in a plant in Maine. Russia doesn't want us building those munitions anymore. They could bomb that munitions plant. That's one option. They could hack that munitions plant. Or they could use a bunch of bots, flood an internet, and target a specific group of people that are highly susceptible to their misinformation and convince them that this plant is so bad for workers, the environment, an animal that lives there, whatever, to swarm this place with protesters to where they can't work anymore, right? And they basically took it out by leveraging citizens of that own country, misinformation, and having them do the actual action. That would be fifth generation warfare. But it's still not wrapped up in a nice, neat little box. I don't think we've seen the ends of the effects of fifth generation warfare, much less sixth, whatever he thinks sixth is.
Care how I have to get it. And it's the same thing you see at the root level with a man who steals bread.
Oh, we're going to pause it for 1 second. Wait a second. I just want you to know, like, I think what he was arguing is that we're at war right now. Instead, he clearly, like, has boned up for this and studied about, like, what is war about. And I'm going to, I don't know what he read or listened to and memorized for this interview, but he's so excited to be able to project that he is smart enough to know that war is about resources unless it's not. And it's just about, my God's better than your God and peppercorn. That was one of the anecdotes that amused me about the peppercorns. But the question is, how is it that we're at war? And he's basically come up with a new definition of war, a more modern definition, which is war that is so subtle that we don't know about it. Now, people used to call this like economic war or just trade.
Yeah. Also, lawfare is another sort of type of thing.
Without a doubt. Diplomacy. Diplomacy is really just sixth generation war.
When you think about it, we actually have been doing
Diplomacy, if you think about it. Peace treaties are really just seventh generation war, because what are they stopping? They're stopping the actual war, but what's going on in the background? People are agreeing to things that they don't want to agree to, but they do it in the name of peace. That's just seventh generation warfare.
World War III for the last
Don't
years.
make me quote Clausewitz, but even though I do actually happen to have the quote right here. All right, let's continue.
Family is hungry or whatever, we still frown upon it. So the generations of warfare, they evolve. We see the advent of new technologies and new methodologies in warfare all the time. If the purpose of warfare is to secure control of a population,
God damn, how many times has Tim Pool said this in the mirror?
so you can control its resources, a tendency for that reason. Sometimes it's, my God is better than your God, and your people must adhere to my worldview and my beliefs. So in the United States, we are going through, and this is not my opinion, this is academics who have assessed what warfare is.
Oh, okay. Whoa. Okay. Well, wait a second. If it's academics who
The academics are all over it, guys. This is not my opinion. The academics said we're in war right now.
decided this, well then, hello, okay.
I'm not going to name one of them.
Yeah. All the academics, too, have lined up. Like, we all have met and have decided, excuse me while I draw on my pipe, that Tim Pool is correct in his assessment of our new type of war. Good.
Sixth, which we are going through, and this is not my opinion, this is academics who have assessed what warfare is. You get to fourth and fifth generational warfare, now sixth, which people are going to argue it as we form these ideas in academia, six may change. But fourth and fifth have to do with online political manipulations, manipulations of influence technologies, and use of insurgency. Today, it's fair to say that we are in a kinetic conflict. Civil strife began several years ago in the United States.
I think he's wrong. That fourth is the blurring between combatants and civilians, wars and skirmishes and peacekeeping missions, private military contractors. I think he's kind of blurring the lines between fourth. I don't think most people would confuse fourth and fifth.
Civil strife is not civil war, but there are many people dying. One of these examples, of course, is
terrorism, widespread terrorism or terrorist attacks would fall under fourth. A lack of hierarchy in the command structure. Attacking for core ideals or beliefs would probably fall in there. I'm trying to think of like terrorists fighting insurgents. Yeah. I don't think you would confuse that with fifth though. Fifth makes the leap online to like social engineering and shit.
Aaron Danielson took 2 bullets to the chest from a far leftist Michael Reinhold with a communist tattoo on his neck for no reason.
Pause it for a second. So one guy getting shot, and wasn't that like 4 years ago?
It's a shot heard around the world.
And then the FBI showed up at that guy's house and fucking murked him in his driveway. Right? That's the same guy. FBI ended up showing up at his house, killing him in his driveway.
4 years ago?
I don't even know if it's the actual violence, though. He's saying, like, the internet, the engaging on the internet. Like, this
No,
is what we're doing now.
there's kinetic activity right now, which constitutes a sixth-generation war, according to academics. Russ, you're arguing with academics, not with me.
I just want to be careful because it seems like we might be engaging now in an active war.
This could be, we're both being kinetic. I mean, it's true.
Maybe by the seventh
There's
generation.
kineticism here. There's kineticism.
That's some other good examples.
Wait, let's continue on here. I want to hear about this.
Chest from a far leftist Michael Reinhold with a communist tattoo on his neck for no reason. And now we have the swattings of conservatives and the firebombings of Tesla facilities for the specific goal of destroying a company for political reasons, for which now Tesla stock has gone down. Partially, it's not the only reason. And we've seen Tesla evicted from the Vancouver Auto Show out of fear of terror attacks.
Oh, wait a second. I didn't know about the eviction of the Vancouver Auto Show. Whoa.
I gotta take your mic down a little bit.
Oh, boy. That was a problem.
To be fair, that shooting was uncalled for, shouldn't have happened. Like that was fucked up, right? It's out in Seattle or somewhere. I can't remember. It's somewhere out in the Pacific Northwest. But I don't think it was for no reason. I mean, right, there were all these protests going on, tensions were heated, people were rioting in the fucking street. I don't think it was for no reason at all. I mean, it wasn't a random act of violence, I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
We got to cut that out of the audio
Edit it
version.
out of the podcast, yeah.
That was kinetic.
That was
Portland's.
I'm
sorry, his
folks.
Portland.
I didn't realize about the Vancouver Auto Show. We are at war. This is war. Suspend habeas corpus for the sake of the auto shows.
I'm going to actually skip a little bit ahead here. I mean, there's...
Whoa. Convenient, Matt.
Okay, I'll
So that we take him out of context, I guess.
Fine, I'll play this a little bit more and then we'll skip ahead.
And that someone eventually would take him out, said Jordan Relic, a longtime friend who is not politically active. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Some Antifa crazy stalked and killed him. He said, yeah, it seems like they were both thought they were enemies of each other, but they were both pretty fucking crazy fanatics in their own movements.
What is he talking about?
Words mean anything. He's just stringing together words.
Yeah.
Administrative conflict. The arresting of his. Is he talking about Rudy Giuliani?
And the other woman who got that, you remember when you said, I don't care about the people that got arrested when you were in his studio?
I feel like I certainly said that to myself many, many times in my head while I was there. But administrative conflict that is now like, so when you arrest a lawyer of Donald Trump's, then we're at war. Who are we at war? Okay,
If a judge is arrested for like immigrant stuff or whatever, you know.
not too much war. That's not war. Okay.
Skipping a little bit ahead here where it gets a little bit more testy.
I send American citizens to El Salvador. I will be opposed in every form that I can, and it's going to be interesting if it gets to that degree. That being said,
What the fuck? If they start sending Americans to El Salvador, I'll be opposed in every degree I can, but it'll be interesting. What? Dude, as much as you stood on the Constitution and Patriot and shit, if they start sending Americans to El Salvador, you ought to be out in the fucking streets with a rifle. Not advocating for that. Not saying that, Twitch. Just saying that this guy's mentality, you wouldn't think he'd be like, that's interesting. We need to discuss this more.
Testy.
I send American citizens to El Salvador. I will be opposed in every form that I can, and it's going to be interesting if it gets to that degree. That being said, when it comes to an actual wartime president in Trump is, when Trump issues a legal order, executive order, saying, we will not have these people in our military, I'm the commander-in-chief, he's allowed to do it. If a judge tries to stop him in this administrative conflict, Donald Trump, I believe, is obligated to say, I have heard the ruling from the court, now try and enforce it, which is a plan Andrew Jackson's famous quote when the Supreme Court ruled against him. In the conflict we are in,
So even Tim Pool, who pitches himself as a moderate, guys, a moderate, says that the Supreme Court rules against him, he's got to say, you know, I've heard it, now tell him to enforce it. I'm doing it anyways. I'm doing it anyways.
Professorial he is.
It's unbelievable.
was
This guy wasn't the Supreme Court. There's a whole legal process you have to go through, which is part of the American process. Now, I appreciate what you're saying, but it just sounds to me like you're redefining wars to give yourself more power, which is what every dictator has always done in history, which is to say, the situation's so bad, I need extra power.
Is Abraham Lincoln a dictator?
Well, look.
Yes or no?
We are not in a war situation.
Is Abraham Lincoln a dictator?
We are not in a war situation.
Was Abraham Lincoln a dictator?
We are not in a war situation. Is the point.
Okay, you're right. I'll just say you're right. Okay, now is Abraham Lincoln a dictator?
So, look.
That's just appeal to authority, right? Well, you're changing the rules. No, I didn't do it. Academics did it. Academics did it.
Yes or no?
Tim, the theoretical examples you give,
It's not a theoretic, it's American history.
fine, but it's not related to the current moment, which is what we're talking about.
So in the
you're
context
saying,
of-
let me just lay out the argument that you made. If I represent it incorrectly, you tell me. The core of your argument that you're making, right, is that because we are in a fourth, fifth, sixth generational warfare situation, a different set of rules ought to apply. It's a wartime, therefore, just like you can apply martial law, just like you can suspend this or that or whatever, right? And the point I'm making to you is this is the argument that every dictator in history has made. Now, I don't know American history as well as you, and maybe...
Oh, pause it. Hold on for 1 second. I got to take issue with that. I find it hard to believe that someone doesn't know American history as well as Tim Pool. But fair enough. Go ahead.
the point...
Okay, listen. If North Carolina was invaded by North Korea, okay, and there's North Korean troops running through the fucking streets of coastal North Carolina, right, amphibious assault landers and paratroopers and shit, I would understand, like, hey, the police cannot fight the North Korean army, right? We probably need soldiers there. To get soldiers there, we go through martial law and bring the soldiers in there. There's a limited scope, limited application, and it's clearly defined. We're in a war. When Trump says there's too many immigrants, we're in a war, that's a little bit different, no? They don't like Tesla anymore. We're in a war. The courts say I'm violating the Constitution. We're in a war.
That you make about Abraham Lincoln is relevant in some way, but what I'm saying to you is something...
But again, like, it's not relevant because that was during a war where Lincoln said, hey, Maryland.
I would probably advocate for troops in North Carolina. Like, I don't expect local police officers to be fighting a fucking formal army, right? Like, I would probably be like the guy, like, hey, we need fucking troops in North Carolina now. Like, I don't know.
Maryland, you can't go with the Confederates, otherwise it's going to be a problem for you, and didn't let them. And that was a suspension of habeas corpus. People don't view him as a dictator because he did that during the course of a just war.
There was also like a huge fracture within civil society during that time, which was the attempt of half of the society to secede from that society.
Quite a lot more violence.
Yes, I think that just a reminder, 500,000 people died in that war, minimum. I mean, soldiers. I don't know about the knock-on impacts of that, but and I would say what was our population at that time is probably a sixth of what it is today. I mean, that probably represented close to 10% of the population, maybe more.
completely different, which is we're not in a war.
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Was Abraham Lincoln a dictator, yes or no?
I don't know.
No. If a leader suspended the right to due process for all peoples, is that a dictatorial move?
It depends on the context.
So, like right now, Trump said, I'm suspending the constitutional rights and due process for far-left terrorists.
Look, I'm not a legal scholar. That seems pretty...
Pause it for a second. Hold on for a second. Here's the problem with what Tim's saying. Who gets to decide that they're far-left terrorists if there is no due process? I just can't imagine that there's this many people who don't understand what due process is. Right. Due process means that you can't just look at somebody and say, you are a criminal. That you need to actually prove that they're a criminal. Yeah.
So Lincoln suspends it because it's to suppress a rebellion from the Confederate sympathizers that still exist after the Civil War is over, right? And apparently there were like all these planned attacks in like Maryland and DC and around the area. I do think he had an ulterior motive to silent dissents, right? Because dissent continues to grow, continues to make more sympathizers that'll become more soldiers to fight in it. And to keep military operations going. Was it the greatest move? Probably not. Was he way, 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 way more justified than Trump will ever fucking be? Probably. Definitely than he is right now. But will probably ever be during his 4 years? Absolutely.
The idea that you're going to suspend due process just for a subset of people is a ridiculous concept because you cannot determine that they are actually part of that subset of people unless you provide due process. When you suspend due process for any given person, you have essentially suspended due process for all people.
We've already seen American citizens kept by ICE or immigration services in Florida. Got let out after a while.
Yeah, that's the one his mom showed up with a birth certificate. And the judge said, this is a valid birth certificate. I 100% believe your son is a U.S. citizen, but there is a hold on him from ICE, and they're just going to have to run its course.
Yeah. What if Donald Trump decided he was going to arrest half of the Washington state body because they were voting in favor of groups that were attacking Tesla facilities?
What does that mean, voting in favor?
So let's say in their state body, someone proposes a bill that they will not arrest nor provide any assistance to any individual in their state who's caught firebombing Tesla facilities or other right-aligned institutions. The state will not enforce the law against them, nor will they aid federal law enforcement.
Right-aligned institutions? I thought it was just a car company. I thought it was just a car company and people were crazy for protesting or not buying the cars because it was just a car company. Now it's a right-aligned company.
Enforcement.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer to that question is legally, but my point to you is...
So, like, this is the problem. If you don't know and you have no thoughts on the matter, then I don't know what we're arguing. You can simply say, Tim, maybe you're right, I don't know.
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm taking the argument that you're making and interrogating it as I do with every other guest. So what I'm saying to you is, you've made the claim that we're in a war.
Pause for 1 second. Like, the guy with the glasses. I don't know. Are these the two regular hosts on the show?
Yeah, this is the two.
The guy with the
claim that we're in a war.
The guy with the glasses.
For 1 second. Like, the guy with the glasses. I don't know. Are these the two regular hosts on the show?
Yeah, this is the two.
The guy with the glasses is looking at Tim Pool and thinking, my God, I don't know if we've ever had someone so stupid, but yet so arrogant about it at the same time. It really does look like this guy is looking at, like he's never seen anything quite like Tim Pool.
So what I'm saying to you is, you've made the claim that we're in a war in order to be able to justify suspending the rules applying equally to everybody. That's basically what you've done, right?
So
when I look outside, I don't see a war that justifies that.
When you look outside in a largely liberal jurisdiction where everyone agrees with each other, you don't see anything justifying?
No. We've traveled around the United States plenty.
And
I have never seen anything that justifies
Pause it for a second. Now, I was in West Virginia.
I mean, what percentage of people who, even not even just the U.S. population, of people who've actively voted against Trump, do you think are firebombing Tesla dealerships? This is, again, culture war bullshit. Like, they try to make it sound like there's a litter box in every classroom. There's a trans teacher indoctrinating kindergarten kids every day. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Man, granted, this was 6 months ago, but did not
He wore the beanie to a pool party. He wears it all the time.
seem like there was a war going on.
Did you ask the academics that were
Now, I will say this, Tim is living in a chained compound, and it is sort of one of the more awkward things, like a chained compound, and so he may feel like he's at war.
Is taking money from a country that is actually at actual war in terms of Russia, is taking money from them to say another country is undergoing civil war. Is that 6th generation? Is that 5th generation? What generation of warfare?
It's not kinetic if you've convinced yourself the guy's from Belgium.
In this country.
Firebombing of Tesla facilities, the shooting them up, the murder and killing of people for
That
political
should be dealt
purposes.
with through the criminal justice system.
So, first, you aren't, I'm not arguing that
what do you say?
the conflict we're in right now warrants anything close to what Abraham Lincoln did.
Okay. Well, you kept bringing them up.
Because I'm trying to understand what your philosophical and moral view is.
Oh, here we go.
And
Watch
what I'm
out.
saying to you is you can't
Where do you fit into the
I'm not-
Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I'm asking you right now, based on the American Civil War and what's going on, was Abraham Lincoln a dictator for suspending habeas corpus and arresting
which is sidestepping my point, which is right now.
I don't think you can answer the question.
I already did answer the question. I answered the question by saying you know more about it than me. You remember that?
So do you want to say I don't know?
I already said that.
So you're not sure?
I've already said that. But what I'm saying is the example you're bringing up is not relevant to the conversation.
Should Donald Trump
So just because he's not sure what his stance is on Abraham Lincoln, because it in no part applies to Donald Trump, he's saying these are not the same thing. But if you don't know about Abraham Lincoln, then you don't know about Trump, and I could be right.
invoke the Insurrection Act and send U.S. Army into California, Oregon, and Washington to start hunting down and arresting the terrorist cells that are organizing these attacks?
No, I think the law enforcement can take care of that.
They're not doing it.
What do you mean they're not doing it?
Well, I mean, we've had
We've literally had arrests. Remember, they paraded them all over social media and take videos and talk about how stupid they are, and they put them up everywhere.
left.
I can't even, honestly, I feel like subjecting the audience to this at this point. It really, we're total rubbernecking now. This is a total, car accident. He is now suggesting, and I don't know when they recorded this, and it has not aged well. If it was, presumably it was like a month or two ago when there were 8 Tesla vehicles that were lit on fire. And
in all across the United States, there's only been 80 reported cases of vandalism against Tesla vehicles in the U.S. and in Canada. 10 at either dealerships, charging stations, or facilities.
Tesla was prevented from going into the Vancouver car show. And, I mean, you had reportedly the board of directors of Tesla waging war on Elon Musk by trying to find a replacement general for the Tesla motor company. But Tim apparently has some inside information that law enforcement is not looking for these people. But wasn't somebody arrested?
Yes.
I imagine so. I mean, in this Tesla thing, it's like they're being very antagonistic to Canadians right now. I can imagine that probably made it targets.
But he's suggesting that Trump should send in federal. I mean, it's quite possible that if it's happened over the course of 3 states, the FBI could very well be involved.
Right.
But he's talking about sending in some type of militia to round up these
terrorists.
The Tesla terrorists, these cells of terrorists that exist.
A quick Google search would indicate that people, in fact, have been arrested for some of these activities. But maybe not buying Teslas is also, maybe that's like 8th generation.
All right, here's the story. What to know. No serious injuries have been reported so far in the most recent attacks occurred at a Tesla collision center in Las Vegas. Several vehicles were set on fire, and the word resist was spray painted in red on the building's front doors, according to authorities. That was Las Vegas on March 18th. On the same day, a couple of cyber trucks caught fire at a dealership in Kansas City, Missouri. Police are investigating and say it could be an arson attack. But so far, we just know that some cyber trucks caught on fire, or whenever this was posted. In Tigard, Oregon, a Portland suburb, gunshots were fired near a Tesla dealership on March 6, damaging vehicles and the building. A second shooting incident occurred at the same location on March 13th. So 2 different times, the gunshots fired at the dealership. In Linwood, Washington, 6 Tesla vehicles were vandalized on March 11th, including one that was defaced with a swastika. In Dedham, Massachusetts, 3 Tesla vehicles were vandalized on March 11th with spray-painted graffiti and tire damage, according to the police. They slashed tires. In Seattle, Washington, 4 Tesla Cybertrucks were destroyed at a dealership on March 9th. In Littleton, Massachusetts, you know what's crazy? Usually when there's like this weird trend like this and it makes like the left look like everybody's doing some kind of, when they get down to it, a lot of times they'll end up arresting at least one right-wing guy who just wanted to make it look like the left was doing more than what they usually were. Same thing with the right. When the right's doing something crazy and blah, 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 they usually arrest at least one left-leaning person, and then both sides use it to say, oh, look, they're feds. They were doing it the whole time. It's all them. It's pretty funny to watch. Just like every time that the Nazis march somewhere, and all the Nazi groups are like, feds, look at their haircuts, look at their glasses, look how they march in lines. They got to be feds.
Kinetic.
That is amazing. Tim, I feel like Tim is spiraling.
I want to know what
Those are friendly interviewers too.
What happens if you say, yes, I think Abraham Lincoln was a dictator? Then what happens? Like in his argument, I was trying to piece that together.
Well, then Donald Trump can be a dictator because he's president too.
I mean, to be fair, like Lincoln did suspend habeas corpus. The original name of the term dictator, wasn't was value neutral in the Roman sort of era. But the reason we don't look at Lincoln as a dictator is because we agree with what he did. Most of us.
Well, I mean, I think look, the question is does the circumstance justify extraordinary unconstitutional measures? And I think there's an argument on some level that like maybe some of the things he did was unjustified. And I think probably had he lived and we had a sense of whether he had suspended them or not, but there's no like, what Tim doesn't seem to understand is there's no sort of like although he has the academics behind him, all you ultimately ever get is a broad consensus. And the broad consensus is there's no like court case that comes down and go like, we found you guilty of being a dictator. There's a broad consensus. There's a broad consensus of, whether a historical figure was a dictator or not. And sometimes contemporaneously you cannot.
And even at the time of Lincoln, there were people that like fought against this, right? I think the Chief Justice at the time tried to argue that only Congress could suspend habeas corpus. Lincoln, of course, argued that it, for public safety and to keep the Union together and blah, 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 whatever. But other people were like, well, you're violating civil liberties. The Constitution kind of says that Congress is supposed to do this. There doesn't seem to be this crazy urgency like you're making it out to be.
You can't get a broad consensus. There are people who believe that Trump is authoritarian right now, and others who would say, no, he's not. Or others who might say, we need an authoritarian figure right now. Tim doesn't seem to have understand that nuance. That two people could see the same facts and say...
And I think the only 2 times you're allowed to do it is, it says in the Constitution, in cases of rebellion or invasion. And then it says something about, and you need public safety, or public safety requires it. But rebellion and invasion.
I do think that Lincoln was a dictator, and I don't think that Lincoln was a dictator, but I think the act of suspending habeas corpus in and of itself during the Civil War is probably, I would think that most academics would not consider that, consider him a dictator. Is that dictatorial? Maybe some might say maybe a little bit.
Well, you live in a liberal area where everyone agrees with each other, so you don't see it.
Well, I think you would have to say it's dictatorial, right? Because a dictator would do it. It's an action that a dictator would likely take if given the opportunity. So I think you have to say it's dictatorial. Was he doing it to be a dictator? I think that's the argument.
See that we're actually at war right now.
It's true.
According to academics.
It's true.
Why doesn't he go out and cover the war?
He's a war reporter. Like,
studio.
he's getting ready.
That's what he's
I
doing.
feel like he's gearing up
doing
a
right
little
now.
bit. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.
God almighty. I wonder what the highlights of that looked like. Trigonometry. I wonder if they have a thing at the front that's like all their highlights. Trump did what is their most recent video with Francis Foster. That was one of the host guys, right? Here it is. Civil War in America.
What do you make of where we are at the moment? What's your take?
Do I have to say it? Civil
700,000 views.
War. We're tracking over the past several years.
What do you make of where we are at the moment? What's your take?
Do I have to say it? Civil War. We're tracking over the past several years that we are in a period of civil strife. Civil strife is defined academically as 70 or more political deaths per year. We have 30 in the first 2 months. In times of war, a wartime president makes difficult decisions which are outside what our principles purport to be.
But we're not in a time of war.
And it's also as well, Tim. No, we're not.
What I'm saying is you're extending the
Which are outside what are defined academically as 70 or more political deaths per year. We have 30 in the first 2 months. In
70 or more political deaths. What are these political deaths? Wouldn't that be unrest? Civil strife? Where are these deaths? I can't even find this definition. 70 or more political deaths per year. It talks about journalists being killed, mass killings under communist regimes, 10 to 20 million. 2024 is the deadliest year for journalists. Global death rate and violent political conflicts over the long run. Death by American bombings overseas. Democide. Political violence in polarized U.S. at its worst since 1970s. Maybe that's it. There have been a total of 18 deadly political attacks since the Capitol riot, killing 39 people. This is in 2023. This was written. Let me find that paragraph. Hold on. The November 5th killing of Anthony King was among 213 cases of political violence identified by Reuters since January 6, 2021, attack by supporters of former President Donald Trump on U.S. Capitol. 3 academics who reviewed the cases say they add to the growing evidence that America is grappling with the biggest and most sustained increase in political violence since the 70s. The violence has killed at least 39 people, including King, rolling many aspects of American life from small gatherings to large-scale public events. Some deaths followed one-on-one disputes, such as a fatal brawl last year between 2 Florida men arguing over Trump's business acumen. Others happened in public settings, such as a shooting of 5 social justice protesters in Portland last year by a man immersed in far-right political rhetoric. Politically motivated mass killings claimed 24 of the lives, including May 2022 shooting of 10 black shoppers in Buffalo by a white supremacist who called for a race war. I think if we break down the numbers, this is going to go the opposite way of what Tim Pool thinks. About 2/3 of the politically violent incidents documented by Reuters were assaults by lone assailants or clashes between rival groups at public events, such as demonstrations over police killings, abortion, and transgender rights. The rest involved substantial property damage, often associated with social justice protests and frequently attributed by police to left-wing militants. Incidents of political violence began rising in 2016, around the time of Trump's first run for presidency, said Gary LaFree. It's almost like Trump brings this shit with him, isn't it? A University of Maryland criminologist who has tracked such violence in terrorism database between 1970s to 2020. Political violence surged for nearly a decade, starting in the 1960s. 1970 alone saw more than 450 cases. So in 1970 alone, Tim says 70 cases. In 1970 alone, there was 450 cases. But it had become relatively rare in 1980. There are a few spikes in the 90s, including 1995 Oklahoma City federal building bombing that killed 168 people. And we didn't have martial law after the federal building bombing in Oklahoma City. And what the Federal Bureau of Investigation describes as the nation's worst act of homegrown terrorism, political violence started to climb again in 2016. LaFree added, and it doesn't seem like we're hitting the top of the wave yet. The wave differs in both its aims and its means. In contrast, much of today's political violence is aimed at people. And most of the deadly outbursts tracked by Reuters have come from the right. Of the 14 fatal political attacks since the Capitol riot in which the perpetrator or suspect had a clear partisan leaning, 13 of them were right-leaning assailants. 1 was on the left. Of the 14 that have happened since January 6th, 13 of them were right-wing perpetrators. 1 of them was on the left.
Times of war, a wartime president makes difficult decisions which are outside what our principles purport to be.
But we're not in a time of war.
And it's also as well, Tim. No, we're not.
What I'm saying is you're extending the definition of war, wartime, and emergency in order to suit your agenda, is what it sounds like.
You're incorrect.
Simple?
No. Give me one example. Well, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. Sorry, I just want to see the highlight reel, and then I want to see what are they talking about 9 hours ago.
As an Englishman, I was delighted when Donald Trump won the American election. Now, I know our countries have their differences. In England, cars drive on the left. In America, cars get Molotov cocktailed in Tesla showrooms. In the UK, homosexuality is deemed legal, whereas in America, they call it professional wrestling. In America, they measure everything in miles. But enough about their women's clothes sizes. Yes, Donald Trump promised to tackle wokeness and the lunacy of the Democrat open borders policy. And he's been highly effective at doing both. Trump is currently behaving like a nightclub bouncer. 1 in, 10,000 out. The only difference is when I get kicked out of my local nightclub, I didn't end up in a maximum security prison in El Salvador. I had to get the night bus home alone, which, to be fair, had a similar number of Hispanics with face tattoos. At least in prison, you don't have to listen to morons playing terrible music on their mobile phone. Trump, like all good nightclub bouncers who ward off sausage fests, is making sure that it's not just men getting in either. Unlike the Democrats, who at the end of their term didn't know what an illegal immigrant was, let alone a woman. Of course Trump knows what a woman is. He's had sex with millions of them. He's basically Russell Brand. If Russell understood the meaning of the word consent, Trump isn't a Nazi. But his testicles have produced enough blonde women to prop up the Aryan race for 1,000 years, apart from Ivanka. I don't think the whole marrying a Jew would go down very well in the Nazi party. Or the Democrats, or Labour, or basically any current left-wing party. Sorry, not Jew. Zionist. My mistake. However, now he's been elected, I'm starting to realise that not only may I have backed the wrong horse, I've also realised that the horse has gotten into Elon's secret stash of breakfast ketamine and gone completely and
Is breakfast ketamine.
utterly mental. It's currently going around kicking everyone square in the bollocks, and not just Leah Thomas and other record-breaking female athletes. And by everyone, I mean everyone. Anyone who has any type of investments has seen their value decline quicker than Douglas Murray's chances of being invited back on the Joe Rogan Experience. At this point, the dollar is worth so little that most Americans are now identifying as North Korean. The only difference being the average American has more in common size-wise with Kim Jong-un than Yeonmi Park. Honestly, at this point, I'm expecting to see Americans carting around worthless piles of dollar bills in gardeners' wheelbarrows. But they
Yeah, the beds are like fucking 6 stories high. That's insane.
Trump supported all the gardeners. Billionaires who back Trump are now begging him to think rationally and responsibly when it comes to the economy. But Trump isn't worried because he's just discovered a huge new resource full of oil, natural gas and forests. I think it's called Canada. Yeah, that's right. Trump is so unhinged that he's declared he wants to annex Canada. I'm going to repeat those words again. He wants to annex Canada. This is so demented, it makes Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez look sane. And she's a left-wing childless Latino woman. I've seen more stability at
With a cat.
And now people are saying that Trump helped Canadian frontrunner Pierre Poilievre snatch defeat from the jaws of victory and elect new liberal Canadian PM
Snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Mark Carney, which is the biggest political comeback since Trump got sand in his minge through a month-long tantrum and started that kerfuffle in January a few years back. Good times! Though I never did find that fur hat with the horns on it. But Trump shows no signs of backing down. Particularly now he's doing his favourite thing, which is pissing off the Chinese. But hey, we all love a feisty Asian. His whole presidency looks like one giant attempt to troll Xi Jinping. I'm half expecting him to tweet out a picture of Winnie the Pooh crying because he's found out that US tariffs have increased by 983%. And don't get me wrong, who doesn't love pissing off the Chinese? The accent alone makes it worth it. Imagine Xi calling up Trump furious because no one wants to buy his products anymore. It'd be like having an argument with your local takeaway and intentionally winding up the owner. Hello, this is Mr. Trump. Is this Xi Jinping's tasty CCP wings? Yeah, what you want? I'm charging you to deliver to me. It's going to cost you 245% of your order. But you've already ordered. I have 238 spring rolls in oven. We're paying too much. We've been ripped off for too long. We're not going to pay. What are you talking about? You're a fool. You don't pay. You pay. We're not going to order at your restaurant. We're going to be ordering American takeouts from now on. We've eaten enough wet market pangolin, thank you. You order American food. American food no good. It's the best food, the greatest. Not my words. That's what they all say. We're going to eat American chicken. Chicken tastes better with chlorine. You fat American piece of shit. You order our food. Now only deliver food to other places. Do they make Diet Coke in China? No. Then we'll be fine. You're fired. But I can't help wondering where this is going to end. Because you can't keep antagonizing people. At some point, you're going to have to learn how to work with them. And I do realize that this is hypocritical coming from a man who started a channel called Trigonometry. But even I draw the line at pissing off the Chinese Communist Party. I wouldn't even piss off the local Chinese restaurant because I want my spring rolls. All 238 of them. If you enjoyed this monologue, make sure to head over to my Substack where you'll find loads of content just like this.
So that's the host, Francis Foster. I want to see this because Linus usually doesn't. You guys know who Linus Tech Tips is? He's like got the biggest YouTube like tech channel, computers and everything in between. It seems like he's talking about tariffs. I want to see what is going on here.
Import loophole closes and things are about to cost more. You see, I think a lot of people didn't fully grasp the magnitude of the tariffs that are going to be hitting U.S. consumers. And a big part of the reason for that is...
Dude, was it Adafruit? Somebody that I buy stuff from, like Raspberry Pis and Arduinos and shit and accessories. I think it's Adafruit. Posted a receipt the other day of some imports that they had ordered months ago. It didn't say what the product was, but they had ordered it like 6 months ago. It finally got fulfilled and brought here, and it was like 1,000 pounds of some shit, right? Whatever it was. And they had a $36,000 tariff that they were told to pay within 1 week. Here it is. So, let's see. Adafruit Industries, Brooklyn, New York. I order from Adafruit all the time. They had a merchandise process fee for $198, duty tax processing for $726, permits and licensing for $28, clearance processing for $10, multi-line entry for $45, and import-export duties, $36,126.46. $445.9 kilogram package from DHL to be paid within 1 week. Thank God they've got like a really good base of like people who buy from. Adafruit's a really good company. If you're ever looking for small electronic stuff. So there were people in the chat saying, well, I just because I like you guys, I'll buy more stuff from you guys. This is ridiculous. This is crazy. But they do Arduino, Raspberry Pi, all that shit, right? So here's Adafruit, their website. But still, I mean, holy shit. $36,000 tariff to be paid within 1 week. And they had no idea, right? It wasn't like they saw the tariffs and then they decided, oh, I'd like to play with that. And then they decided, okay, that's the tariffs. So we're going to order anyways and just pay the tariffs. They ordered it months ago before any tariffs existed. They finished the production and shipped it over here in fucking pallets or whatever. And then they get hit with it. A $36,000 bill that has to be paid within 7 days. The components were ordered months before the tariff changes. They can't be sourced elsewhere due to intellectual property, IP restrictions. So they put in their posts like, hey, we would love to buy these in the U.S., but the people we ordered from have IP restrictions. They make it. They're the only people that can make it, rightfully so. They weren't arguing against IP. And must be paid immediately. No after sales are made. So they can't even sell it. They can't sell it and then pay the government. They have to pay the government first. Unlike other taxes where we collect on behalf of the state or only pay if we're profitable, tariff taxes are paid before we sell any products and are due within a week of receipt. The company now faces an impossible choice: dramatically raise prices and risk having unsold inventory, or absorb the massive costs that they haven't even budgeted for. We'll have to increase the prices on some of these products, but we're not sure if people will be willing to pay the higher cost. So we'll be stuck with unsellable inventory that we have already paid a large fee on. It's easy to envision the lewd grin spreading across Vladimir Putin's necrotic face as he reads reports like this. They've already paid for the production. I mean, if they cancel, then they're out what they paid for all the production. I don't know. It's wild. Anyways, let's see what Linus was saying.
Is that a lot of the new tariffs that have been announced don't sound that big. They don't sound like that much. They don't sound like a huge deal. But here's the thing. The big change is not necessarily the amount that the tariffs are, or the categories of products that they're on, or even the source of the goods that are being tariffed. The big thing that's going to impact consumers in their day-to-day purchases is the elimination of the de minimis exemption. So the de minimis exemption...
By the way, this is going to destroy small businesses. I don't know if I told you all, the lady that makes the silicone placemat or whatever, she cannot find anybody in the U.S. to make it. She can't. And she can't raise her prices 175% either.
This new cash.
It's just going to destroy small businesses. They can't. They don't have the room to absorb anything. I think it's called the Busy Baby Mat. But I want to say I saw it on her personal page, not the actual. It's like a silicone mat that likes suction cups. Oh, here it is. Before we get to Linus, let's watch this video.
So, to answer everyone's question, why don't you just make them in America now? Move your manufacturing here. If bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. is the goal, why are companies like Apple and Microsoft, who are most likely able to bring manufacturing back to the U.S., off the hook? I get that if...
Imagine somebody that sells like 500 units a year of a product that costs $20, and you're like, well, open up a plant here. Maybe you should build a factory in Texas.
We don't let them continue to manufacture in China and exempt them from the tariffs that our cell phones and computers, which we all use, are going to get
And even if Trump thinks that the market will see this need and then plants will just open, how long does it take to build like an injection molding plant? 5 years, probably minimum.
Ridiculously expensive. I get it. But the latest manufacturing that was done in the U.S. that we were good at was tech manufacturing. And those companies moved their manufacturing to China. They have the biggest pocketbooks. They have the most likely ability to bring that manufacturing back to the U.S. I'm a small business. I invented a placemat. This is my prototype. I cut and glued this together.
Those are really cool, by the way. That's the prototype one, but her new ones are really cool. They've got these little stretchy arms like she's got on the prototype that like hold the baby's spoon and rattle or pacifier or whatever you tie them to. And the placemat sticks. It can't hit the floor. They can't flip their plate like kids like to do.
I made a product that stops babies from dropping and throwing their toys. It's a placemat. This is the real one. Suction cups on the bottom.
There it is.
Toy straps that allow you to attach toys so babies can't drop them and throw them on the ground. When my son was born,
it's a cool product.
I had no idea how to turn it into a real thing. I was just a mom. I had a corporate job. I made one for a friend and she forgot it one night and she's like, oh my God, it was the worst not having it. I didn't realize how useful it was until I didn't have it. You need to make that for real. And I thought, wow, how would I do that? So I found a product developer who had the expertise to help me design the product for manufacturing. And that American product developer also had a team in China to help me start manufacturing. The reason I could not start my manufacturing in the US is because I am a small business. I cannot afford to make 20,000 units. The reason US manufacturers require such high production runs is because they have to import the raw material. The raw material does not exist in the US. And so they have to import that material in volumes that are big enough to bring down the costs. They also need the company they are manufacturing for to produce large amounts, because every time you switch out the machinery in a production line, you're not making money. It's downtime.
Just making a set of mold dies can be like anywhere from like $30,000 to like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So the factories in the US that have very high labor fees, that have very high expenses, they need to make product continually to be able to pay their bills. Totally understand that. So to start my business, we started in China, where they were willing to do very small production runs for us. Because when I invented this and I invested my own money into starting this company, I didn't know if people were actually going to buy it. I didn't know if it was actually, I thought it was a good idea, but I didn't know if other parents would want to buy it. Okay, turns out they have. Cool. So now fast forward 8 years, and I have products sitting in China, ready to come. In my warehouse outside, I have about 2 to 3 months of inventory. When that is gone, I have no more inventory to sell. So then I have to figure out, how am I going to pay my employees, pay my insurance, pay my lease when I don't have any revenue coming in? I have 3 months more product that's ready to ship to the US. However, it's going to cost me, what are we up to now? Let's see, we're up to $229,000 I have to come up with in 30 days just to get it across the border. On top of the cost I've already paid for that product. I own the product. But just, it's going to cost me, what are we up to now? Let's see, we're up to $229,000 I have
$230,000 in tariffs
to come up with in 30 days just to get it across the border. On top of the cost I've already paid for that product. I own the product. But just to get it across the
There should have been an exemption for small businesses.
border, that cost, I have to increase my prices. I have to more than double my prices. I'm selling products to people with babies. They're trying to keep up with so many new expenses in their life, diapers, some getting formula, baby clothes, all the things you have to buy and carry around with you for a baby. While my products are great for baby's development and they make life so much easier as a parent, you don't need them to raise a baby. People are not going to pay double the price for my products. So I can't import them right now, but I also can't run out of money. All right. If I found a factory today that was willing to do this, that had the right equipment, that had the right raw material, who had time, because these factories are already booked. The factories in the US are working hard. They're not just sitting around waiting for new companies to come in. But let's just
They basically have to be running all the time or they shut down, right? It's hard to run a factory when you do like one run of something, then you have to lay off people for a month or 2 or 3 until your next order comes in. They're booked out in advance for thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces. They have down to the minute, they have to change molds and switch to a different line and do this, do that, because they have to keep steady workflow.
Just pretend that one is like, hey, Beth, come on, we'll do it for you right now. All right, cool, let's do it. First, we need to make molds. A mold, and I'm gonna try and put that bit in this video, is a steel plate that has cut out the shape of your product. And for my product, they take chunks of silicone, set it on the mold, which is heated, and then they compress it, compression molding, and it's heated and it smelts the silicone and smushes it into the shape of a mat, okay? Every piece of my
That's pretty cool.
has a different mold. The mini mat has a mold, the big mat has a mold, the bottle bungee has a mold, the tethers have a mold. I would need 8 new molds made. So you take American steel, which is not cheap. It gets sent to China to be tooled, to be turned into a mold to fit the shape, because that's where the expertise lies. And then it gets sent back. You do that 2 or 3 times until it's perfect. That process
And then pay the tariffs on it every time it comes in.
takes like 6 to 8 months. And because of the cost in the US, my molds at a minimum, if I'm lucky, will be $20,000 a piece. So I need $180,000, $160,000 just for the molds. And I need 8 months to get them made. And that's before I can even start production. One production line with my mat can do about 100 mats a day. We sell more than that right now. So I need multiple production lines. I looked into starting my own factory. The cost of the equipment alone is $1 million, more than $1 million. Then I have to find somebody who has expertise. But since we don't do this type of manufacturing in the US, there aren't people here who have the expertise to run this product line. I have to pay more for insurance. I have to pay more for labor. The cost of my products will more than double. Who's gonna buy them? Nobody. So for everyone thinking it's so easy to just make it in America, like I'm all ears. I am not opposed to that in any way whatsoever. Tell me how. Tell me what I'm not seeing here. Help me figure this out. Because I'll do it. I will do it. I will make it in America if we can find a way that keeps me in business. Leave a note in the comments, okay? And I will reach out to you. So
It just doesn't seem like a viable option, right?
So to answer everyone's question, why don't you just make them in America now? Move your manufacturing here. If bringing manufacturing back to the US is the goal, why are companies like
Oh, that must be it.
who are most
That's the same one we just watched. I guess she pinned it once and put it up once as well. I don't know. As a small business owner, it's got to suck. And it seems like a pretty awesome product.
In this bag is the ultimate bundle. Invented the Busy Baby mat,
If you have a young baby.
dropping and throwing all of the things on the ground. It all started with this placemat. I got on Shark Tank with this thing 4 years ago. It's got suction cups that stick down to your high chair or restaurant table. These are new and improved. We just got them in. They are 3 times stronger suction than our old mats. Mat has 4 suction cups on the back that stick to any smooth, clean surface, and comes with these tethers that you can use to hook up anything you want for your baby. Just go through or around whatever they want to play with. You plug it in to your mat, and now they can play, drop, throw. It's not going anywhere. We have a miniature version that works on your smaller bumbo trays, travel trays, on the go. Both mats stick to your airplane window.
And she seems like she's excited about it. She even took it to Shark Tank. It's obviously a passion project for her, but seems like she's just going to be out of business.
Was, well, I guess exactly what it sounds like. It was an exemption on incoming shipments that were under the threshold of $800. And the idea behind it was that...
But it's not just it's not the risk of going into business, right? It's out of the blue, nowhere. From nowhere, you got a 185% tariff now. There are risks associated with business and stuff that you need to factor in and be wary of. One of them is typically not 180% tariff instituted by the president because he's in a dick measuring contest with another country.
These small shipments, clearly intended for non-commercial use for individual consumers, were not worth the hassle of dealing with handling all these tiny transactions for all of these incoming shipments, and also, I guess, a way to reduce prices for individual consumers. So for years now, there's been the ability for sites like Temu, Shein, AliExpress.
Is it Temu?
Yeah.
Oh, I always thought it was Temu.
I don't know. LTTstore.com to ship items that otherwise would have already been tariffed into the United States without them being tariffed, as long as the total order was under $800.
So this is for like people ordering shit for themselves. Now that's gone. Like you used to be able to go. There's a bunch of websites where I order electronics from that come from China, direct from China or whatever. It's kind of hit or miss, but it's so cheap. I just buy a pack of them and see if they work. But that's gone. It doesn't matter. All of it's tariff now.
Is gone. I believe, May 2nd. So that is gone today. And it is already resulting in some pretty interesting impacts. Temu has said they will no longer sell imported goods directly to consumers. Instead, there will be locally based sellers who fulfill the orders.
Yeah, this is a B2B2C or business to business to customer strategy that like a lot of people are employing now because of this change.
Now, I'm about to say something.
Right. A risk of business would be like, okay, well, silicone has went up like 10% or whatever. It's not a guy just fucking coming in doing a broadcast and somebody's like, Mr. President, China said they were raising their tariffs to 25%. And he's like, fuck it, we're doing 125. Like, that doesn't seem like something anybody would plan for.
Thing that's going to sound pretty flippin' wild. Closing exemptions that mostly benefit fast fashion and like manufactured e-waste, maybe not a bad thing.
I'm kind of okay with that.
I mean,
if that's what they mostly benefit, those are things that are bad. So,
well, who they benefit is importers who are basically, burning jet fuel,
drop shipping garbage,
sending some like these small pieces of junk over the ocean, one at a flipping time, rather than consolidating them on container ships, sending them across the ocean that way. And
so if tomorrow, for no good reason whatsoever, your electric company raises your bill 200% on top of what it already is, you're just going to say that's the cost of having electricity. Electric companies do it. It's fucking stupid, dude.
And then having them distributed on the other side. However, even though I am pretty anti-fast fashion as a whole, like one of our big core tenets for LTT Store is that when we make a clothing product, when we make an apparel item, it should be made to last. And if for whatever reason it doesn't last, there's always the Trust Me Bro guarantee. You contact our support and we will do whatever we can to make it right. And I have always been of kind of the mind that, well, what does it matter if these pants are not the current style? Like, have they fallen off me yet? Well, then I will continue to wear them. But it has become I think it's fair to say, growing plague.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it fair to call fast fashion a growing plague?
I think so.
Where people are treating clothing as being effectively disposable after a couple of wears.
It used to be like a couple stores in the mall that weren't necessarily that popular, and now it's like massive online sites where it seems like genuinely a lot of people do their shopping.
Which has led to a positive feedback loop where sellers are noticing that there's absolutely no benefit to their customer to building something that lasts, so they make cheaper and cheaper stuff, which leads people to have expectations that things should be really cheap because realistically it's only going to last a few wears, and so on and so on and so forth, until we've spiraled into this mindset, both on the consumer and on the manufacturer side, that all this stuff is basically disposable and is good for, part of one season before it should just be thrown away. And there's ideas for how you can solve.
You're talking about a tax that they've raised in small increments over the last fucking 60 years. You're going to compare that to one guy saying, okay, it's 180% now. It was 0, now it's 180.
oh, I'll just donate all of my own clothes. But I don't know if you guys have looked into that in the last 5 to 10 years, but the volume of clothing that exists to be donated vastly exceeds the demand for donated clothing. And as that clothing has gone down in quality, that has become a bigger and bigger problem. So, you know, to some people who are just kind of reflexively against anything that the current U.S. administration...
No, you're not comparing like things. A tax on a gallon of gasoline that goes up at most 5 cents. Right? It's raised in small increments over time and builds up is not the same as 0 to 200% just because in one day. Those are not like things.
Administration does. That might sound like a controversial take, but for me, it is actually, at least on the surface, aligned with something that I think is not necessarily a terrible idea.
I do think
if gas went from $8 a gallon to $24 a gallon, and you just say, well, that's the cost of living here, people would be fucking pissed about that too. It's not right. They shouldn't do it. It's going to fuck people.
Okay, so that might be the majority of what it targets, and so it makes sense, cool. I do think there are things that are going to get cleaved from this that were not under that.
So my next words were going to be, with that said.
Do you think it would be interesting if something could come through de minimis if it had like a really strong warranty, long duration, strong warranty?
I don't know how you'd enforce that because
it sounds tough to him.
Because, and this is something that I have clashed with our audience about before. Because everyone has a different perspective, which is impacted by the people around you, the place you grew up, what you've experienced, right? Your life experiences. And when I say things like, yeah, a warranty is only worth the paper that it's written on, it comes down to the willingness of that company to honor it.
It's because Canada's kind of more like that.
There's going to be folks from Australia, for instance, where they have strong consumer protection laws, and they literally like actually have somebody that they can contact that actually has, you know, fangs that can go after these companies and be like, hey, you actually need to refund them.
I don't know. Find me the clip, I guess. Send me the clip of me saying, China can do that, though. You're just making shit up.
Or whatever else. So here, that functionally doesn't really exist.
Like practically civil court, as far as my understanding.
Yeah, you could maybe try to go to small claims court. You could basically, you're going to end up spending more.
Yeah.
Maybe not in money, but certainly in your time to try to get anyone to honor a warranty that they just basically don't feel like honoring. So that's the perspective that I'm coming at it with. And with that in mind, I think companies that have absolutely no intention of, in many cases, even
U.S. is not China's biggest customer. That's wrong as well.
Existing a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 5 years from now, they'll be like, oh yeah, this M.2 adapter for a full-size M.2 in the first-gen ROG.
I think it was 2022. The EU overtook that.
The Ally has a 1 billion years warranty.
So they would just ChatGPT a warranty, drop ship one huge thing worth of stuff, sell it all. Once it's sold, disappear.
So anyway, there's a lot of babies in the bathwater, and some of the impacts are going to be felt in the electronics industry. So Microsoft has raised the price of consoles, games, and accessories worldwide. The 2 terabyte Series X costs more than a PS5 Pro for now. We've actually got a handy-dandy little table here where you can see U.S. pricing changes across the board for Microsoft. So let's have a look here. The Xbox Series S 512 has gone from $299 to $379. Series
Damn.
$100 increase. A 2 terabyte Series X is now $730.
It's interesting to me though that if you keep looking, some things didn't change, and it's pretty much controllers.
I mean, some of the controllers did change too.
So
though.
the Elites.
Oh yeah, no, you're right.
Most of them
Special
didn't
edition,
change.
Yes.
The Elite controller Series 2 full went up. The Core did not. I'm not sure what the difference between those is.
So what I will say is, because we've had to go through, like, because we're not just reading about this in the news, we're living through this with LTT Store, is that the way that things are going to change is not necessarily going.
It's definitely going to hurt sales. I just wanted to see what he was going to say about it. We don't have to watch the whole thing.
Intuitive to the average consumer, because this is a multivariable function here. So, for instance, one of the things that happened when we split. Oh, so this is one of the big things on our side this week is LTTstore.com is actually now split into 2 sites. So global.lttstore.com will take you to a landing page. And
then United States.
From the United States, you click the United States one. And if you are anywhere else in the world, you go to the global site. So I'm going to open up both of these because we are an excellent, seriously, right click to, I want to open in a new tab. Okay.
Anyways, Linus even getting involved. He typically steers away from politics, but there we go. Let's start here.
In an interview with Stephen Colbert last In a brand new interview, billionaire philanthropist Bill Gates telling the FT this, quote, "The picture of the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children is not a pretty one." The FT reports this, quote, Gates said Musk had canceled grants to a hospital in Gaza province, Mozambique, that prevents women transmitting HIV to their babies in the mistaken belief that the U.S. was supplying condoms.
Gazan hospital in Mozambique to keep women from transmitting HIV to their babies. Because he thought that Gaza was getting condoms, he canceled that contract.
Canceled grants to a hospital in Gaza province, Mozambique, that prevents women transmitting HIV to their babies in the mistaken belief that the U.S. was supplying condoms to Hamas in Gaza in the Middle East. Quote, I'd love for him to go in and meet the children that have now been infected with HIV because he cut that money. Bill Gates announced plans to step up where Trump and Musk have.
Such a good dude. Thank you for the gifted sub. I appreciate it.
Pulled away with plans to spend more than $200 billion on global health in the next 20 years. Gates also expanded on his comments in an interview with Stephen Colbert last night. Watch.
I've been out in the field with the people who work for USAID and seen, the brilliant work they do and how important that is. Unfortunately, there was a weekend where it was decided they were criminals and they were put in the wood chipper. And so we lost a lot of capacity there. Now, we can get it back. Eventually, Congress is the one who will have the final word on this. And even I'm not even sure the administration understands, what's going on in the field.
They don't. They just rushed in to do shit. Congress appropriates the funds. They have the purse strings.
Because we do have, for the first time in 25 years, we have more children dying. Instead of it going down, it's now going up. And unless we reverse pretty quickly, that'll be over 1 million additional deaths.
And you lay some of this at the feet of Doge and, of course, Elon Musk. And I hope I'm getting this even close here. You said the picture of the world's richest man being involved in the death of the world's poorest is not a pretty one.
That's right.
Well said. Well said.
I know the conspiracy theorists all hate Bill Gates or whatever, but he's actually on a kick right now to give away the majority of his wealth. Like, you can hate him all he wants, but he's done a lot of fucking great things with his money. Not to say he isn't a billionaire and hasn't probably done some shady things to make that money. He probably has. But now he's trying to give away his fucking wealth. He says that he doesn't want people to think that he died wealthy, super rich, I guess. And he's calling out Elon Musk for what it is. There's not much gray area there with what Elon Musk has been doing.
Without forcing every American to break the bank. Well, let's talk about can the U.S. bring something like apparel manufacturing back to America without forcing?
This is a really good breakdown of like shoes. I know the simple mentality is Nike makes a pair of shoes for $25. And then they sell it to us for $100. They make $75. Fuck them. But that's not manufacturing.
Forcing every American to break the bank. Well, let's talk about shoes. How much it costs to make a pair and how much you can reasonably sell that pair for. What will the market bear? And we'll use a pair of Nikes made in Asia as an example. Retail price, $100. A few years ago, the head of Nike's footwear sourcing program said, on average, on that $100 pair of shoes, figure 25 of those dollars is the cost of actually making the shoe in the.
So there you go. They make $75, right?
Factory, which makes it sound like Nike's making $75 profit on every pair of $100 shoes, which is insane, but of course we're not done. That $25 production cost is really just the Asian factory. The material, the labor, all of it. But that's a long way from the shoe being on your foot, right? You gotta send.
Oh, thank you for the donation. I appreciate it.
Insurance, add another $1 onto the total cost. And US duties, which was pre-tariffs, about $2.50. So now we're up to around $28.50 to bring those Asian-made shoes into the United States. But then Nike.
So we got shipping, insurance, and already existing US duties.
Has to tell people that it's got some cool new shoes, right? There's marketing.
How much do you think Nike spends in advertising?
Paying for operations here in North America, labor, so on and so forth. And that's a big expense. Another $15 on this particular pair of shoes.
Thank you, Q.
Taxes, because of course there's taxes. And we're now basically at just over $45. But you're still
$45.50. When they break down their finances of a $100 shoe and they get it here, they've got $45.50 in it.
Still not wearing the shoes, because it's not like Nike makes most of its money selling direct to consumer. It sells mainly through stores like Foot Locker or Sports Experts, and they're going to want their cut as well. According to Nike, a retail store might pay them around $50 for the shoes, and this is where Nike takes the money.
It costs Nike around $45 to make the shoe and get it here. And they sell it to the shoe store for $50.
And exits the transaction, pocketing a relatively small profit of $4.50. But now this shoe is the retailer's problem. They've got to recoup the $50 they just paid Nike and all of their other operating costs too. So that's why they're setting the price to you, the customer, at $100. But here's the kicker. According to Foot Locker's financial statements, they don't tend to sell $100 shoes for $100. They might sell that pair for close.
Of course not. Every time you go to a shoe store, they're running some type of deal, right? Buy one, get one half off. Buy two for this. Buy this for that. Coupon this, coupon that.
Closer to 60 because of all the discounts that they have to offer to actually move product before the end of the season.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that bumps. It hits the shelf, it doesn't sell, so now it has to go on sale.
So all of a sudden, you've sold a $50 shoe for $60 for a measly $10 margin, and that's got to pay for your own marketing, your employees, overhead costs, and ideally, you make some kind of profit. Otherwise, why did you bother buying and selling the shoe in the first place?
Apparel is generally low margin. There just isn't a lot of wiggle room at all.
This is the low cost.
Apparel is extremely low margin.
The equilibrium that this one slice of the apparel industry has reached. Can all of that start?
The net profit, the average net profit of retail stores is 2 to 5%.
And finish in America? And if so, how much more is it going to cost you? If we look at apparel manufacturing today, there are a couple of big things that China has that the U.S. doesn't. The first,
if you take out, oh shit, I didn't mean to do that. If you take out operating costs, all of their operating costs, it's a 30 to 50% average margin. But that's with no operating costs whatsoever.
A ski jacket that has many complicated steps, that is so labor intensive that at times it's just not possible in the U.S. to produce such a thing and be affordable at the retail level.
Yeah, because American workers are just paid more. And that's true not just in clothing, but across all manufacturing. As of mid-2024, the average manufacturing worker in the United States earned close to $30 an hour. Compare that to under $7 an hour in China. Some of that we can attribute to much harsher and, by Western standards, unethical labor practices. But China also has a much bigger population and a massive pool of workers ready and willing to do this kind of work for $7 an hour, which we should say does go further than $7 would here in Canada or the United States.
On average, cost of living in China is similar to the labor discount, anywhere from a quarter up to half of what it costs to live here in the United States.
They may not have.
I was talking to a neighbor about the immigration and told her the $200,000 house would cost her $320 just to build at cost. Holy shit.
Economic opportunities. So working in a garment factories can be.
Dude, I'm so fucking depressed that like I'm part of a generation that's probably never going to own a home. Like, that's fucked up. I'm like so like a lot of people my age that own a home either got really stable and did it really early, and some of them did it on their own. I don't want to take that from them, but a lot of them had some type of help, right? Whether that was a down payment or financing or something. And then below me, they're even more fucked.
Can be a great choice or a very attractive choice to many people living there.
So how would a factory in America even begin to close that gap? Well, the Trump administration has an idea.
How can we compete without labor? The answer is robotics are going to do it better. And
robots.
And the key to robotics is going to be American AI and American intuition and the American technology.
The idea here being, if you can delegate some of the more mechanical work.
Bring my job back from China. Okay, you're a robot.
To robots, like Tesla's Optimus. That could improve efficiency and reduce costs, right? And according to Trump's team, this could also create new, higher-paying jobs for Americans running those robot factories.
You're going to see the greatest surge in training for what we call tradecraft, teaching people how to be robotics mechanics, engineers, and electricians.
But this doesn't even quantify. Like, first of all, Elon Musk already told us we couldn't be engineers because we're too fucking dumb, right? They have to get all those H-1B visas in. Second, do you think it's 1 for 1? Every robot in a factory has a mechanic that stands there and works on it? Obviously not.
High-tech factories.
Except this, too, has a cost, a big upfront cost, because they're not just talking about moving factories to the United States. They're talking about creating something better and more efficient than what China already has.
But China is like the fucking global forerunner on efficiency. I don't know why people look at Chinese factories and they think that they're all like this sweatshop where someone's doing something super inefficient all by hand. Like Linus Tech Tips, that channel we just watched, he goes and tours tons of electronics factories. And you want to talk about efficiency. Like they've got it down pat already. You can only get so fucking efficient. You can only get so efficient with the technology we currently have. Right? You're not going to out-efficiency them 200%. To offset the pricing.
doing it from the ground up. That's not easy.
The Chinese government invests significantly in different industries. So when you look at the equipment they have there, which is, the spinning, weaving, bleaching, the cut and sew operation, it's all highly automated. They're very good at producing large volumes at low cost.
And even if you could get a whole slate of brand new U.S. factories filled with robots doing all the work, experts agree they still need the materials to work with.
At some level, I have to still use the thread. I still have to use the buttons or something that is produced in China.
We would have to
raw materials, especially
lots and lots of infrastructure in the entire apparel supply chain. In short, it's going to take billions and billions, if not tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars.
Everyone we spoke to did agree there are some industries where it could make sense for the U.S. to invest in reshoring, building weapons, or making pharmaceuticals, for example. These are very arguably...
I'm afraid that, even when the market drops and crashes, that'll just be another way for the corporate investors to come and snatch up even more of them.
Issues of national security. But not every industry is like that. And the example of clothes, a source of major domestic manufacturing loss in the United States.
It is simply not feasible for America to...
I don't think stuff like apparel, there's just not enough margin there.
Get a lot of these jobs back.
Personally, I do not think this is reality. It just doesn't make sense.
But they want every job back. It doesn't matter. Because if we didn't want every job back, then there wouldn't be across the board tariffs. Like if we were going to say like, okay, well, apparel manufacturing is probably not going to come here. That's just not feasible. Then there wouldn't be tariffs on it. They're saying the only people they're giving breaks to are fucking Trump's buddies, right? Apple. Oh, suddenly they got a break. Wow. Then we have the second verse of this. So you guys remember, this is Sub Radio Band. They did the Elon Musk version of this song. Now they got the JD Vance. Here you go. For your listening pleasure, chat.
Extracting himself from another couch. Awkward and phony and fully sold out. Bowel-shaking earthquakes of reason and fact. Abuse him, confuse him, but fail to connect. He's bullying trans kids, what a surprise. Rich from a guy with 2 raccoon eyes. Cause he's lying and whining, incredibly dense. Just give him a donut, whatever makes sense. The stocks have gone down and the prices go up. And long ago JD fucked up the cup. But he's lying and crying, upsettingly odd. The Pope had to meet him and said, I'm telling God.
The Pope had to meet him and then said, I'm telling God. That's pretty good.
Fucked up the cup, but he's lying and crying, upsettingly odd. The Pope had to meet him and said, I'm telling God. He's rigging the system. He's drowning in memes. He's on the phone.
On the phone.
Planning World War III. Because he's lying and whining and writing a book where he literally just says all his family and friends in Appalachia where he grew up are stupid hicks who deserve to be addicted to opiates and not have grocery stores and just take advantage of welfare. And it's actually just like really cruel and patronizing. Anyway, he's rigging the system.
I don't know why the media that likes him pretends like he wrote this like masterpiece on Appalachia. That really put it into into the modern day city square, like people fucking talking about it and shit. He just shit on Appalachia, basically. The ones that pull themselves up from the bootstraps are like him, and everybody else is just lazy pieces of shit. What separates the successful from the unsuccessful are the expectations that they had for their own lives. Yet the message of the right is increasingly, it's not your fault that you're a loser. It's the government's fault. That's a quote from his book. What separates the successful from the unsuccessful are the expectations they had for their own lives. Yet the message from the right, which is wrong, is increasingly, it's not your fault that you're a loser. It's the government's fault.
Just take advantage of welfare, and it's actually just like really cruel and patronizing. Anyway, he's rigging the system.
Pretty good music from Sub Radio. Let's go see if we can find the first verse again, the Elon one. It was pretty good. This is the Elon, the first verse.
Distractingly white on the White House lawn, selling Teslas while the press looks on. Everything is computer, he says with a grin.
slashing and cutting more money for kids. He's dressed like a loser, sleeps with a gun, paid with a horse to join the Mile High Club. Reckless and stupid and out of control, running SpaceX from a ketamine hole. As they play Village People, the rally's done. Both billionaires, so they already won. The arena is empty, except for one man still jumping and yelling as loud as he can. My stocks have gone down and the prices go up, and every card broke in my Cybertruck. But he's lying and crying and tweeting at Grimes and saying concerning for the 99th time. He's rigging the system.
Both of them are pretty good.
He's all alone, tweeting out more memes. Because he's wasted and racist, compulsive and mean. He's lying and whining and crying on TV. He's rigging the system.
They're a good band. I like Sub Radio.
Distractingly white on the White House.
They kind of blew up on TikTok. They did a bunch of like remakes of like older stuff, but made it like relevant to today. And they kind of fucking blew up on TikTok. Sub Radio, if you want to check them out. I think someone said they're from Michigan, but I'm not even sure. I don't want to say that. I can't remember. Sub Radio. Check them out on TikTok, YouTube. They got all the channels. This is a teacher, retired teacher, I believe, who's currently having some flashbacks.
I used to give an assignment that haunts me to this day. I have been retired for almost a year. I was a high school English teacher for 32 years, and I think about this assignment almost daily. I often wonder if the students who did this assignment in my class stop and think, whoa, we never thought this assignment would become a reality. For context, I took advanced placement seniors in my literature and composition class, and
AP seniors.
They were given this assignment in May of their junior year and needed to have it ready to go in September of their senior year. They needed to read 1984, Brave New World, and The Handmaid's Tale. And while they were reading, they had to take notes on the elements of the totalitarian societies, how human freedoms were taken away, how did these societies control their people, what methods did they use, were they science or technology or intimidation or punishment, and were there rebels in these societies? And when they got back to school in September, I would pose a question to them, and it was, which of these fictional societies do you think has the most likelihood of becoming a reality? And I remember, especially when I first started this, 2010, they would scoff and say things like, oh, well, we don't have to worry about any of that. As a class, we would create a Venn diagram of the similarities and differences among the three societies. And then after all of that, I would ask them to break into groups based on which fictional society they believed had the most likelihood of coming true. And from that point on, they prepared a debate. The group for The Handmaid's Tale would always bring up gender-based authoritarian regimes. They would cite Saudi Arabia, North Korea, the Taliban in Afghanistan, the places where women were literally and metaphorically silenced in every single way. They didn't start to talk about reproductive health care, especially early on, but they definitely did later. The 1984 group would always bring up North Korea, Stalinist Russia, China. They would talk about how the surveillance of the people
I had an assignment like this when I was in school.
In those countries and the censorship of the people in those countries really limited freedom and kept them in fear. But around 2013, 2014, my kids started to bring in the fact that they were signing up for lots of platforms at that time and giving their information willingly. And where was that information going? And I even used to show a video called Ordering Pizza in 2005. And it was about digital surveillance and how much the government would know about us and how much corporations would know about us with all of our information going online. And then the Brave New World group would get up and they would talk about how there is a disconnect that was happening among people. They saw it even in 2015, 2016, 2017. They talked about consumerism and over-medication and the fact that people were breaking away from each other and how the government would be able to control the social classes that they were in. I used to show a fake website called GenoChoice where I pretended as if I had swabbed my cheek and sent in my DNA and was able to make a designer baby. And these kids were outraged. That should never happen. That can never happen. Can that happen? Well, they're cloning sheep. The discussions and the debates went on for days. From about 2010 to 2015, there was always a sigh of relief at the end of the debate, and their comfort in knowing that this would not happen in the United States. I really started to see a shift in 2015 because not only were they becoming more immersed in.
I think a cool assignment now would be Handmaid's Tale and Project 2025. And a paper on it.
Technology and losing themselves in technology and not having as many human connections. They were also recognizing the fact that their information was unchecked online. And they didn't know where it was going, but they also didn't care, but they were a little bit nervous that they didn't care, but also wanted to immerse themselves in this new technology. So the last year that I did this and we did the Venn diagram, there were lots of questions of not if, but when. The news articles that they were getting were no longer from overseas. A lot of them were coming from within the United States, and that made them very nervous. A lot of the discussions went into political parties and ideologies, and I let them debate among each other. It's not my place to put my opinion in there, but I saw that there was definitely a tension that was rising that could get out of hand, and there were factions developing very strongly. And I am not a poli-sci teacher, and there could be lots of complaints. Our once very clear and very distinct Venn diagram had become a circle. And that's why this assignment haunts me to this day.
I keep seeing videos and clipping some of them for the show about how much of Project 2025 is completed, blah, blah, blah. But I think it'd be interesting to have, like, this is your daily update on how much closer we are to Project 2025 and aligning stuff that's actually happening versus the pitch, like read the pitch and then cite what actually happened kind of deal.
Years ago, I posed a hypothetical question about fictional societies to students who were incredulous about it ever becoming a reality. And now here we are. It is no longer hypothetical, and it is no longer fiction. My wish is that this dystopian combo novel that we're living in right now has an epilogue that has a glimmer of hope for the future of this society. Let's make Orwell, Atwood, and Huxley fiction again.
From BuzzFeed. Just got my first tariff bill. It's pretty wild. Oh, they changed the title of it. Tariff Sticker Shock. Is that what it's titled now? Just got our first tariff bill. Americans are sharing how they're already seeing Trump's tariffs affects their lives and businesses. It's going to quote, as Trump's tariffs have gone into effect, businesses like Wise have started sharing what these new import charges look like. Just got our first tariff bill. We imported $167,000 of floodlights. So Wise is like a camera company, right? They make like kind of like Ring doorbells, but they make other cameras. We imported $167,000 of floodlights and then paid $255,000 in tariffs. That's more than any of our founders were paid last year. Wise went on to share an invoice showing a duty charge of $255,000 on $167,000 of product for those who say we made it up. 2, they're not the only ones. Another small business owner went viral on X for sharing the $2,885 import duty, aka tariff charge, on a shipment of less than $2,000 worth of equipment. So this is something called Glitch Tech. It's real, you all. Less than $2,000 of equipment, and they show DHL. They owe $2,885.29 for a parcel from Hong Kong. And this business owner showed the jaw-dropping price difference between shipping her supplies to Canada versus the U.S. She says, QT Cinderella says, genuine small business question. Has anyone found a good website for suppliers outside of ones affected by the tariffs? My business is a Japanese craft store. Almost all of my supplies are coming from China. Picture 1, I ship my inventory to Canada address. Picture 2, if I ship my inventory to my business address. I don't know what I'm going to do. Triple my prices. And it shows one summary for $1,427 to Canada. And the other one is $3,614 to the U.S. Under additional charges, there's over $1,000 in tariff charges. Damn. Here's a closer look at the breakdown. Shipping fee, blah, blah, blah. it's $1,800 in tariffs. Additional charge is $1,806.15. Speaking of Canada, our neighbors to the north have started adding a T symbol on grocery store price labels for imported items that come with a tariff charge. Not sure if this has been implemented in all superstores yet, but because there is a T in a black triangle on the price tag for the items now that have a tariff charge added. So it's a little black triangle with a white T in it. People are still sharing examples of tariff charges on cheap goods from Temu. Temu MAGA hats with tariffs went from $14.58 to $35.11. And higher priced goods like suits manufactured in China for this Canadian company are also starting to show tariff charges. Hi friends, I'm trying to buy 2 suits for my favorite Canadian retailer, Spear and Mackay, which I recommend. The product costs $525 and the tariff charge is $890. What the fuck? For a total of $1,400 for 2 suits. Some businesses aren't clearly showing a tariff charge and instead seem to have opted to roll tariff costs in their shipping fees. Brian Krasenstein says paying $540 in shipping, aka tariffs, for a $260 dress. I thought tariffs were a tax on foreign countries. Welcome to the Find Out stage, brought to you by a convicted felon who bankrupted 6 companies and sold you a lie. And this says $261 subtotal, $542 in shipping for a total of $803. Sadly, some brands like this lingerie company have decided to pause shipping items to the U.S. due to tariffs. To our U.S. customers, this is from Understance. We have received many messages asking when we'll reopen U.S. shipping. We wish we had better news, but for now, U.S. shipping will remain paused. We'll update you as soon as anything changes. As of May 5th, 2025, here's where things stand. With the removal of de minimis, that's what Linus was talking about. Anything used to be under $800 was like for personal use, not business use, no tariffs. That's gone now. The tariffs will apply. This means that 145% introduced on April 11th, plus 17% commodities for 162%. If a bra's price tag is $59, we will be required to collect an additional $95 from you and remit this to the border agency, making the total $154.58 for a bra. Given the lack of clarity around the tariff collection and refund, that's what I would do. Like if I owned a international company and it wasn't going to destroy me, the tariffs are changing so quickly on a daily basis. I would be so afraid to be behind and like the government try to sue me or arrest me or some shit. If I could just ship to everywhere else and not the U.S. until they figure this out, that's what I would do, right? It's like paying your taxes. They're not going to tell you you owe this amount, pay it. You have to figure it out yourself, send it in, maybe not, do this, don't do that, hire a customs agent, right? Hire a fucking accountant for this shit. And if you fuck it up, they're going to come after you and say you didn't pay. Even used items that are imported can incur tariff fees. This Reddit user wrote, a couple of weeks ago, I bought a pre-owned Louis Vuitton wallet from a Japanese seller. The item shipped from Japan. I paid $80 for the wallet, plus U.S. sales tax, $116.91 in total. I just got another notice from DHL that my tariff fees are $83. A used handbag. That's got to be categorized wrong, but again, we don't know how to roll this out at a fucking whim. This person noticed the tariff charge on flowers just in time for Mother's Day, sending my mom flowers, and look, there's a $9 tariff charge. What the fuck? This is from Al's Florist. $149.99 plus a $9 temporary tariff fee. Tariffs are also impacting healthcare like this person's dentist because many essential supplies and equipment are made overseas. My dental office just told me that they're adding a $50 tariff charge to all appointments. Bruh. And after I shared some of my first tariff receipts going around the internet a couple of weeks ago, members of BuzzFeed community also shared how they're starting to see tariffs show up in their daily lives. I got engaged a couple months ago and have been going through the wedding planning process. A bunch of bridal retailers, signs, bridesmaids dresses, wedding dresses, etc. are announcing price increases on items, taking an already extremely expensive process even more out of reach. My daughter's job here in Sweden laid off 25 people, stating that due to tariffs from the U.S. and the war in Ukraine, their orders had been drastically reduced, and they couldn't afford to keep those workers on in such an uncertain future. Small business owners here I have stopped carrying pagan items, tarot cards, and accessories because the cost, not even retail markup, has gone from $3.49 per item to $10.49 per item. As a small seller, I just can't compete. I lost money last month because of it. Having to change my business plan, I'm just gobsmacked. I've had a local MAGA explain that if I can't handle it, close. It's just the price of doing business. That's what what's his name said. I donate profits to the food banks and a couple of local LGBTQIA plus nonprofits. I'm at a loss. An Etsy shop. I rely on my income. I'm disabled, need to work from home. The items that I made my products out of are just not made in the U.S. and need to be imported. They are now 3 to 5 times more expensive than they were. My profits were already razor thin. Sales have slowed since the economy may be bad. I worked so hard to make this a success. I don't know what I'm going to do. The IT guy at my school just bought in a huge shipment of Chromebooks and said that that's it for getting them. After June 1st, they either won't be imported or will triple in price. Any schools that didn't get them now are shit out of luck. A lot of schools have went to a ton on Chromebooks after COVID. There's a few more here. The last, thank you for sharing that article. That's interesting. You want to see what it's like hanging out in my town? We made the mistake of going through a McDonald's drive-thru. You guys want to see a real-life meth head in action? In action? Let's check it out. Crackhead things. She's picking, she's hitting her phone, she's arguing with him that she placed an online order.
Who's playing on her phone? Oh. She's like fidgeting a lot.
Digging her nose.
She's methed the fuck out, dude. Yeah. And she keeps like picking at her neck.
Digging her nose again.
Digging her nose now. There's somebody in the passenger seat too.
I swear they don't even realize they're doing it.
I wonder how long she's been there since before. Reminds me of my child.
4 cars went through while she was arguing with the lady on the speaker in her line.
Shut up.
Reminds me of my childhood.
Shut up.
What did I say? Reminds me of my childhood.
I wonder how long she's been there since before.
Reminds me of my childhood.
Shut up.
Wait till you see her passenger.
Take your time, she ain't 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh,
there she is.
Oh, finally. Dang.
So then they finally get through the line, okay? They finally get through the line, and they pull up beside us in, like, the parking area. So here you go. We're still waiting on our food because even though we used online order and they should have our order, they fucked it up again. They just pull up to the third window, didn't get... Oh, it was bad.
She's probably watching me now. I'm just going to slide back.
So he's just digging shit out of the car. Like he's down on his knees. He fell out of the car, almost dropped his ice cream. And now he's just in the floorboard digging for shit.
Out of the way.
This is her passenger.
Oh my God, what is he looking
He's digging for change. They're going back to the drive-thru.
Shut up, I'll die. I will die.
Did you see him almost fall shutting the door? Watch.
I will die. When he first got out of the car, he tripped. He almost fell. He tripped.
Gives you a good little ass tap. Make sure it's close.
What's happening now? Oh God damn, he's going to the engine. Nope, what's happening?
Oh, walk it off.
Oh gosh, stop.
We're losing.
walking around eating ice cream.
Oh my God, he's digging. He's so like he's saying it, but please.
All right, I dropped something here for a second, but then I come back. When he's trying to get back in the car here.
Like the man said.
Ask him to come over here and get it. Say, hey, I dropped something on the floorboard. You get it?
Starts digging again.
Hold that while you try to get it.
No.
No, why would it be a cop, sir?
Holy shit.
The kids are way too loud.
Oh, inside voice.
I don't think he ever did find what he was looking for.
This is like 30 minutes of them just digging in the floorboard of his car.
I bet it.
Dude, it was fucking wild. I wish you guys could have been there in person. They were tweaked the fuck out. Like some of the best parts I didn't even get because that's what made us notice it. But man, smacking shit and fucking digging for shit. Man, welcome to Appalachia, where people just do meth and go out in public and do meth head things. All right, guys, that's it for me tonight. I'm out of here. Consider supporting the show over at coldbeer.fund. We greatly appreciate it. We could use the support right now as we work to get back to hopefully get the campground back open, get the job back or whatever. We'll see. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for the donation, Q Idiot. And we'll see everybody on the next one. Have a good night. Love you. See you. Bye. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a good one, guys.
But I can tell you this about if this douchebag happens to see this particular show, you don't have the fork and balls to call out the people on this planet by name.
Oh, congratulations to Mariah's sister. She got married today. It was just like a family thing, but she still did her ceremony today.
Okay, Scott. Here we go. I think I started some shit. Listen off. It's about to get lit. Get the place in the bets. You know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. Here we go. I think I started some shit. Listen off. It's about to get lit. Get the place in the bets. You know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. And they say that I'm a lunatic. Well, listen, bitch, I came equipped with a quick wit and a 6th sense for the stupid shit. Where my true believer? Y'all need Jesus. Praise the Lord, head to the extreme. All these false fucking prophets who profit off of gossip. Worshipping drums, cocking, begging for a throat deposit. Swinging fucking meat hammers like Thor in a thong. He's strapped to the shaft, beating his chest like he's King Kong. Starving for attention, I'ma make your gut burst. I'll be your huckleberry, I can quench that thirst. Baby eating lizard people, alien sex. What's next? Trump in a dress, fucking Flynn on his desk. A retard in a vest, climbing up 5G towers. Cause you told him if he did, he'd get fucking superpowers. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in the bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in the bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. I used to find clues too when I was high on shrooms. I found myself a tunnel that led to Jason Q's bedroom. Open his closet, I found some of his meat rockets. I strapped it to my shoes and then I flew through the roof. I found myself in orbit strapped to an F-16. High on amphetamine, with Trump in between. Put on a light coat of baby oil and saluted the troops. He tapped me on the shoulder and said, this is gonna be it. Whoa, wait. Stop. What?
It's depressing right now, but stick with me. We'll be back better than ever eventually. Hopefully.
Come on.
Maybe everybody start hating Trump with us.